Hello everybody, thank you for clicking on my video today, and in today's video we're going to be focusing upon how to write a personal statement for medicine. So this is just a little slide about me. So I've made quite a few different videos on my YouTube channel. So if you have a look on the right hand side, you can see a selection of some of the videos that I've made, including how I got into medicine, what work experience placements are recommended, how to score highly in the UK CAT, how to be successful at a medical school interview, and also how to be successful in the preclinical years of medicine, so that's in years 1 and year 2. So this slide in the centre is a slide taken from a previous video that I made, and the video that it's from is how I got into medical school. So just a quick little whistle stop tour about me is that I applied twice to medical school. So the first time that I applied to medicine I wasn't successful, and it was primarily due to my personal statement. The university admissions team didn't find that my personal statement was competitive enough, and that's why I wasn't shortlisted for an interview. Now, the second time that I applied to medicine, my personal statement was much stronger, and that led me to be fortunate enough to have 2 medical school interviews, and I accepted a place at Keele University, and I'm currently a 4th year medical student. So that's just a little bit of background information about me, and also just to stress how important the personal statement is in terms of helping students being shortlisted for interview, because once you're shortlisted for interview, then the odds are more in your favour in terms of getting a place at medical school. So the personal statement is very, very important. So in today's video I've structured the video in terms of how I would go about structuring a personal statement. So initially we'll talk about how to write an introduction, and then we're going to discuss about writing about the work experience, and that's the main aspect of the personal statement that will make the majority of your personal statement. And then we're going to look about how you can demonstrate your interest and passion for studying medicine, and then reflect upon any hobbies and interests that you have outside of medicine, and then finally conclude the personal statement. Now, it might seem controversial to discuss work experience and then discuss interest and passion, and the reason that I've done this is that personally I would prefer to talk about the work experience placements that you've undergone, and then have another paragraph emphasising again just how interested and passionate you are about medicine. I do understand that the personal statement is unique to every single candidate, so if you want to talk about your interest and passion for medicine and then have another paragraph talk about your work experience, then you're entirely entitled to do so, but this is just my interpretation, and this is just the way that I structured my personal statement at the time. Okay, so these are some very important and very basic rules that you need to be aware of when you're making your UCAS application. So all UCAS personal statements must have a word limit of 47 lines. So that means you can only have a maximum of 47 lines worth of text for your personal statement. Also, there's a word limit of 4,000 characters. Now, characters are slightly different to words. So characters includes the number of letters, the number of punctuation marks, and the number of spaces. So putting that all together, you can see just how succinct your personal statement needs to be. Also, if you're applying for more competitive courses, there is an early deadline. So this early deadline typically is the 15th of October for whichever year you're applying. So this early deadline involves applicants that are applying for medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine, and any course at Oxbridge universities, so that's Oxford and Cambridge. So that needs to be something that you need to be aware of. Okay, so first and foremost, so how to write an introductory paragraph. So this might seem a little simple or something that you might take for granted, but it's really important in your introductory paragraph that you briefly introduce why you want to study medicine, because the detail and the depth about why you want to apply to medicine is something that you're going to write later on. So you just need to briefly introduce the reader to this idea at the moment. And it's also important that your introductory paragraph has to remain short and succinct, because if you imagine that you're going to a restaurant, you're opening up the menu and you pick a starter, the starter is going to be something that's very small and simple, and then you're going to enjoy your main course later on, and that's going to be the main bulk of your meal. Similarly, with your personal statement, the introductory paragraph is again going to be that little starter, going to entice the reader to continue reading, and the main bulk of your personal statement is far later on, and that will usually concentrate around your work experience paragraph. So that's why you want your introductory paragraph to be quite short and succinct. And also a key aspect of writing an introductory paragraph is to make it very interesting. So the admissions team who are reading and evaluating your personal statement will have read at this point hundreds and hundreds of personal statements, and you want to make your personal statement stand out. You want to give it that lasting impression, so it's more likely that you will get more marks for your personal statement, and it's more likely that you'll be shortlisted for interview. So examples of how you can make your introduction slightly more interesting involves using an interesting quote. So this quote might be from a particularly famous person. So it can be medical, it can be medically related, or it can be non-medically related. It's up to you and how you decide to embed that within your introduction. You can also mention an interesting book that you've read. So again, this might be an interesting quote, and you can mention about how that book really about how that quote in that book really helped to develop your interest in medicine, and then later on go on and explore about why you want to study medicine. So that might be a nice, interesting way of writing about that. Or this might sound a little bit strange, but you could talk about if you've considered a different career. So if you've ever considered another career to medicine, so that could be within the healthcare field or something that's completely different and not in the healthcare field at all. And what you could say is that initially you were interested in that particular career, but later on you developed your interest in medicine, and why you're interested in medicine and not that other career is because you enjoy X, Y, Z aspects about medicine. So you could really use that as a way to sort of contrast the differences between the two career choices, and really emphasize about how much research and reading you've done around medicine and why you think it's the career choice for you. So that's some examples of how to write your introduction. Ensure that it's succinct, ensure that you've introduced your idea of why you want to study medicine, and also it's important to make your introduction stand out. Unless your introduction stands out, unless the reader and the admissions team find it interesting, it's unlikely that they'll enjoy the rest of your personal statement, and it's also unlikely that you'll be shortlisted for interview otherwise. So it's quite important to hit the nail on the head with this. Okay. So the next aspect is about reflecting upon your work experience. Now this will take up the main bulk of your personal statement, because this is what I think is the most key aspect in terms of demonstrating the range of work experience placements that you've undertaken. It really shows the admissions team the tenacity and the determination that you've had in terms of applying for medicine and trying to get all the different types of work experience placements that you have managed to successfully do. So some examples involve using an ABC approach, and I think that's really important when you're reflecting upon your work experience, and that's something that I'll reiterate again and again throughout the video. So A stands for activity, so that's the location where you undertook your work experience. So was that in a care home, was that in a GP setting, was that in a hospital? B is the benefit. So think about the fact that you volunteered, let's say, at an elderly care home where you worked as a carer. What was the benefit of that work experience? How did that help you in terms of improving any existing skills that you currently had, helping you to develop new skills? What really stood out for you during your time there? What benefit did it really bring? And C, related to the course, so how does it relate to medicine? So did it emphasise another aspect of medicine that you hadn't previously considered beforehand? Did it really help to emphasise certain skills and develop certain skills within you? And these are similar skills which would be useful later on in a medical career. So it's really important that you use this ABC approach when reflecting upon your when you're reflecting upon your work experience. A lot of students struggle with this. A lot of students find that they just end up reiterating about what they did on their work experience placement, which unfortunately isn't good enough for a personal statement, because a personal statement is a piece of writing where you're trying to not only reflect upon your experiences that you've had, you're trying to persuade the admissions team to invite you for interview. So a personal statement is very different to a diary. A diary is where you would write down, I went to an elderly home and this is what I did, and etc, etc. But on the personal statement you need to demonstrate to the admissions team that you've got that degree of self-reflection, self-awareness, and you're able to relay all of your experiences, explain how it applies to your future career as a doctor, and really use that entire process to help to sell yourself to the admissions team. So fingers crossed they can give you a invitation to come back for an interview and hopefully get a place at medical school. So some examples of work experience I've included below. I've also got another video dedicated just to work experience placements which are recommended for medical school, so please have a look at that video. But I've got a list below of just a few things that you could do. So working or volunteering as a carer for a vulnerable person or someone with disabilities is really good in terms of demonstrating experience of working within a caring role, and that's something that's exceptionally important if you're working as a doctor or any sort of career within the healthcare field. Also, shadowing a GP is important. It honestly gives you such an insight into the wonderful job that all GPs do. It will really give you an understanding of how a GP not only has to work as a doctor, but also has to work almost like a business manager and be involved in the everyday running of the GP practice. So it's quite important. So shadowing a hospital physician, so this might involve you've been fortunate enough to attend a ward round with them, perhaps sit in on a few multidisciplinary team meetings, and again just reflect on that process using the ABC approach. It could be volunteering with health-related charities. So in my previous video, which is just dedicated to work experience, I've mentioned working with health-related charities like St John's Ambulance and the British Red Cross and a few other charities. So please have a look at that video, and all the details are really in there. Also, working in any role where you have direct contact with the public. So you might be a waiter or a waitress at Cafe Nero, and you will undoubtedly have direct contact with the public, and that's really important because when you're working as a doctor, you're essentially a public servant, so you will be dealing with members of the public. So you will be in situations where you have to resolve difficult situations. Perhaps patients will be angry and upset at you, they might be angry and upset at someone else, and you will have to be involved in managing that situation. So if you have experience working with members of the public, for instance, if you're working at Cafe Nero, you will undoubtedly have been exposed to situations like that. So when you're applying for a position at medical school, and that's something that you can definitely reflect upon in your personal statement, and that's something that might actually come up in a medical school interview. So you might get asked a question about where you've had to manage a difficult situation, and that's an experience like dealing with an angry customer at Cafe Nero whilst you are the waiter or waitress. It's something that you can really draw upon, and you can really use to personalise your interview and make it that much more memorable. So hopefully you'll get a place at medical school. And also observing how healthcare is delivered in another country. So there are lots of different charities which offer placements for students who are interested in applying for medicine. It can be quite pricey, so the best thing to do would be to look very, very carefully at the website and really look carefully about what sort of services are offered to you. So the amount of money that you pay, will that also cover things like accommodation? Will that also cover things like your flight tickets? So it's just a lot of information that you need to keep in the back of your mind and be aware of. And something else I'd also recommend is reading Good Medical Practice and Tomorrow's Doctors. So you can directly download it as a PDF from Google if you type into the Google search bar the titles, or if you go directly onto the GMC's website and write down the titles, again it will be accessible as an online PDF. So as part of the ABC approach, it's very important, and I would strongly recommend that you reflect upon your experiences, but also link back to the key themes and skills which are really hinted at in Good Medical Practice and Tomorrow's Doctors, and hopefully that will really improve your personal statement and help you to get a place at medical school. Okay. And also another section involves demonstrating passions and interests for medicine. So again, using the ABC approach, and examples can include reflecting upon any interesting scientific literature that you've read. So an example of that is when I applied to medical school, some of the medical related books that I read included The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and also The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. So these are two very engaging, very interesting medically related books. So if you have a read of these two books or any other books that take your fancy. Just make sure to use the ABC approach to help to reflect upon what you've gained, what you've learned from reading those books, how has that been beneficial to you, what has that done to help emphasize your interest and passion for medicine further, has that sort of changed your perspectives on anything. But the main aspect of your personal statement is your work experience paragraph. But it's also important to demonstrate a genuine passion and interest in medicine. So one of the ways to do that, I think the easiest way, is to read some interesting books. And similarly, this might be something that they will later discuss at interview. So at a panel interview, they might ask you to explore further the books that you've mentioned in your personal statement, or potentially at a multiple mini interview they might ask you how have you demonstrated your interest and passion for medicine, and if you mention that you've read these two books and this is what you've benefited from reading these two books and how it's improved your passion and your interest for medicine, then again you will come across as a far more confident and engaging candidate, and therefore you'll be more likely to get a place. Okay, so reflect upon attending any lectures at local universities. So some universities will have lectures later on in the late afternoon or late evening, and these will be lectures that are open to the public. You don't have to pay for them, and it will just be a way of increasing awareness or trying to raise awareness about a certain disease or certain piece of research that they've conducted. Again, that might be something interesting to attend and write about in your personal statement. And also reflect upon any sort of workshops that you've attended, or science clubs that you've attended, or perhaps you've run a session at your local school, a science club session. So even if it's something like I don't know, perhaps some sort of like dissection session, dissecting a lamb's heart or something like that. Anything really that will help to just make the admissions team realise just how interested and passionate you are for medicine. Okay. And another key aspect is reflecting upon your hobbies and interests. So these tend to be non-medical because you want to show that you're a well-rounded individual with lots of interests and lots of hobbies and passions. And also another key aspect is that medicine is a very, very stressful course, and it can be quite stressful and tiring working as a doctor, so you need to learn to manage your work-life balance, and you need to have other hobbies outside of medicine just to help you relax and also to de-stress. So it's quite important that you have hobbies for that reason as well. So some examples involve, again, using that ABC approach. It's really, really important. So some of your hobbies might be music. Perhaps you have a grade 8 in piano. Perhaps you're a member of the school's choir team. And again, that's something that you can write in your personal statement, but please remember to adopt this ABC approach. So being a member of a sports club or being a captain of a sports club. So again, that's important, and I think the key thing to mention here with sports club is that you really want to emphasize that you are a good team player or a good team leader. So those are the two sort of key buzzwords that I would want to mention if I was writing about sports clubs in relation to the personal statement. So the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, so if you've achieved a silver, bronze or gold in the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, and potentially focusing on one particular aspect of the scheme that you found was most beneficial to you, and again use that ABC approach. So the challenge or the National Citizen Service, so when I when I was part of the scheme, it was called the Challenge. However, recently I know that it's changed the name to the National Citizen Service. So again, you could write about it using the ABC approach, but again, really emphasize about what you took away, how did it really help develop your interest or your passion for medicine, what have you benefited. And also, if you were a peer mentor at school, if you were leader of any school clubs like I alluded to in the previous slides, or if you were a school prefect, and what has that really shown? So perhaps at this stage you can mention things like that you've got experience of working within a responsible role, that as a peer mentor at school you've developed your listening skills, you've developed your skills in terms of empathizing with other students, for instance. So again, really important to reflect using the ABC approach. And finally, arts and crafts, so like crochet, knitting, embroidery, so potentially discuss about how it helps you to relieve your stress, or anything that you think is beneficial after performing these arts and crafts. And the key thing is to use the ABC approach. So we're getting towards the end now, so concluding the personal statement. So again, it has to be succinct and concise, similar to the introduction. So your conclusion is just sort of helping to tie together all the loose ends in your personal statement, because the bulk of the personal statement will be your work experience. So at this point, it's really important to summarise your interest and passion for medicine, because that's the lasting impression you want the admissions team to have. And one method which I used in my personal statement is just to summarise your key qualities which will help you succeed. So perhaps pick 3 adjectives that you think best describes you, and these 3 adjectives would also help to describe your passion and your interest in medicine, and will also help you to succeed further in the medical pathway. So those are my 3 top tips for concluding the personal statement. And the quote that I'd like to leave you with today is that there is never enough time to do everything, but there is always enough time to do the most important thing. So the reason that I've picked this quote is that I understand how arduous it is to write a personal statement. I understand just how nerve-wracking it is, and also just how exhausting it is. I remember I had nearly 15 to 20 drafts of my personal statement. But the most important thing is that as future medical students, you need to be able to prioritise your time. Unfortunately, medicine is a very competitive course, so there is an early deadline for UCAS personal statements, so it's important that it's finished to a very high standard, because apart from the personal statement and the UK cash, there isn't really anything else that you can really use to supplement your application prior to interview. So that's why it's really important to make your personal statement as strong as you can, and also make your UK CATS score or your BMAT score as competitive as it possibly can be, because those are the only 2 real factors that you have in your control at the moment prior to making the prior to making the medical school application. Okay, so I've got my references here, but if you've enjoyed my video today, and if you've enjoyed my previous videos, then please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share my video with all of your friends. So thank you very much for listening today, and I wish you all the best.